You grind 60 hours a week. You show up early, stay late. Say yes when others shrug. You follow the rules. Sacrifice your time, your energy, even your health, for the job, for the team, for that distant promise of someday. You take pride in doing things right. You're loyal, honest. You believe in effort, in merit, in doing your part. And yet, you watch. As someone else, someone who cuts corners, talks more than they work, someone who lacks your skill but knows the right names, rises higher, faster, living the life you thought you'd earned. And you're left asking yourself, what did I do wrong? But maybe that's not the right question. Maybe the real question is, what lie have I been told? From the moment you could walk, you were fed a narrative. Work hard, and you'll be rewarded. Put in the effort, and life will pay you back. Grind long enough, and the system will notice. It'll recognize you. It'll repay you. But what if that story was never real? What if the formula is broken? Worse, what if it was a myth designed to keep you grinding? Nietzsche, the razor-edged philosopher who peeled back the masks of society, once warned of moral labor, the kind of work celebrated for its obedience, sacrifice, and humility, not because it's noble, but because it keeps people in their place. It's not virtue. It's spiritual slavery, a silent chain disguised as purpose. Because here's the truth most won't say out loud. In a world ruled by power, morality becomes a tool, not to uplift, but to control. You were taught that virtue is its own reward, that if you just kept your head down and stayed good, life would eventually be fair. But life isn't fair. Life is strategic, political, competitive, ruthless. And the system you serve doesn't reward goodness. It rewards leverage, not the value you create, but the value you control. That's why a nurse working 12-hour shifts gets paid less than a teenager selling fake wealth hacks on TikTok. That's why the construction worker breaking his back retires broke, while someone who trades air in financial markets walks away with millions. It's not your fault you believed the myth. The myth was made for people like you, to keep you loyal, to keep you working, to keep you from asking dangerous questions like, who benefits from my sacrifice? Who profits from my exhaustion? Why does the system glorify hard work, but reward something else entirely? Nietzsche didn't tell us to stop working. He didn't praise laziness. What he did challenge was the sacredness of obedience, the idea that suffering in silence somehow makes you worthy, that to be good means to be submissive. He called that belief system slave morality, not born from strength, but from fear, not from power, but from powerlessness. So if you feel stuck, exhausted, invisible, you're not broken. You're waking up. You're beginning to see the uncomfortable truth. The world isn't malfunctioning. It's functioning exactly as it was designed. Because those who rise aren't always the most skilled or the most selfless. They're the ones who understand how power moves, how to navigate it, how to seize it, and how to detach their worth from whether or not the system approves. So ask yourself, what if working harder isn't the answer? What if the belief in moral labor isn't your salvation, but your prison? Because until you confront that lie, you'll keep grinding, while someone else rewrites the rules. Let's zoom in on the contradiction hiding in plain sight. If hard work equals success, then why do the hardest working people in society struggle just to survive? Think about it. The construction crews that rise before dawn, battling heat, cold, and fatigue. The nurses sprinting through 12-hour shifts, missing meals, holidays, and sleep. The janitors, the drivers, the warehouse workers, the very people who keep our cities moving. our shelves stocked, our lives running. And yet, they live paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford to get sick. They count every dollar, every hour, every drop of fuel. Meanwhile, a teenager in a rented Lamborghini films 30 seconds of snake oil advice and earns more in a day than a nurse does in a month. You've seen it. You've felt it. And no, it's not a glitch in the system. It is the system. Because while labor builds the world, labor does not rule it. CEOs, hedge fund titans, politicians, thought leaders draped in prestige. They're not sweating beneath the sun or freezing on the night shift. They're not pushing their bodies to the brink. They don't bleed, toil, or sacrifice muscle and bone. They operate on a different battlefield, a world of leverage, perception, and control. They don't just work, they orchestrate, they influence, they own. Let's stop pretending. We've built a world that doesn't reward effort, but power. A world where controlling capital, networks, and narratives pays infinitely more than producing anything real. And here's the unsettling truth. This isn't a flaw. It's by design. It's tempting to believe the system is broken, that fairness simply slipped through the cracks. But no. This is how the game has always been played, because physical labor, no matter how honest, can be outsourced, automated, undervalued. But control over money, people, ideas, that scales. A nurse can care for one patient at a time. An investor can shift billions with one keystroke. And the system rewards scale. Here's where the lie becomes cruelest. We are told that suffering is noble, that endurance is heroic, that to serve without complaint makes one the moral spine of society. And in many ways that's true. But let's be brutally honest. Morality doesn't pay the rent. Praise doesn't build generational wealth. And sacrifice doesn't translate into power. While the working class is told, be grateful, keep your head down. The elite are taught strategy, manipulation, acquisition. They are taught not to serve, but to dominate, not to endure, but to redesign the very rules of the game. They study law to bend it. They study money to move it. They study people to control them. So ask yourself, if moral labor is so righteous, why is it powerless? Why are those we can't live without treated as the most disposable? Why does society preach hard work only to funnel the rewards elsewhere? Nietzsche had an answer. He said, "The moral system we cherish wasn't built to free us. It was built to tame us. It teaches obedience, not sovereignty. Self-sacrifice, not self-mastery. It glorifies submission and punishes those who dare to challenge the hierarchy. The lie survives for one reason. It serves those in power. Because as long as we're chasing that golden someday, they keep control today. And hope becomes the most effective chain ever forged. So the real question is this: if hard work doesn't lead to power, what does? And more importantly, are you willing to unlearn the lie you were raised to believe? To understand how we got here? Why manipulation is rewarded over merit? Why image outweighs substance? We have to go deeper, to the root, to the foundation of the values we've been taught to revere. And for that, we turn to Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche didn't see morality as sacred. He saw it as strategy, a tool forged by the powerful to serve the powerful. He drew a line between two opposing systems: master morality versus slave morality. Master morality is born from strength. It celebrates ambition, boldness, creativity, the sheer will to bend reality to your vision. It doesn't ask for permission. It defines its own worth. To the master, good is what enhances power, freedom, creation, command. Strength isn't feared, it's a virtue, and virtue is anything that affirms life, power, and potential. But slave morality. Slave morality emerges from weakness. It's the creed of those who cannot compete on the battlefield of force. So instead, they rewrite the rules. They claim humility is holier than strength, that obedience is more righteous than dominance, that suffering is a badge of moral honor. They flip weakness into virtue, not out of enlightenment, but out of necessity. Because when you can't control the world, you must find dignity in surrendering to it. Here's the trap. Once a moral code takes root, it stops being questioned. It stops being practical. It becomes sacred, untouchable. What began as a strategy for survival transforms into scripture. It's no longer guidance, it's gospel. And that's how moral labor became romanticized. The myth was born that the good must sacrifice, that the honorable must serve, that virtue lives in doing your duty without ever asking for something in return. We glorify the silent worker, the one who never complains, the one who always says yes, the one who bends backward for others while quietly breaking inside. But what we don't realize is that this story, it doesn't serve the hero. It serves those who benefit from the hero's silence. Nietzsche would have told you plainly, you are not rewarded for your morality. You are pacified by it. You are praised for being dependable, promoted for being manageable. You're handed just enough, a title, a plaque, a modest raise, to keep you hopeful, but not free. Because real power, ownership, autonomy, control, that stays just out of reach. So the question is, why does this belief still have such a grip? Why do millions cling to the idea that suffering is noble, that sacrifice will be seen, that obedience will one day be rewarded? Because the story is beautiful. It gives purpose to pain. It gives dignity to endurance. It allows people to survive injustice without ever having to confront it. This is slave morality, and it doesn't live on because it's true. It lives on because it's comforting. And comfort, that's a hell of a sedative. But Nietzsche didn't write to soothe you. He wrote to wake you up, to shatter illusions, to drag you toward the terrifying freedom that exists when you stop waiting for justice and start creating your own terms. So the real question isn't just, why were we taught to suffer quietly? It's this: who profits when we do? If this system is so blatantly rigged, if it rewards control more than contribution, then why do so many decent, hardworking people still believe in it? The answer isn't just economic, it's psychological. And it begins long before your first job, long before your first paycheck. From childhood, we're fed a story that the world is fair, that good things happen to good people, that justice always finds its way home. Every cartoon, classroom lesson, bedtime story whispers the same sweet lullaby. Be kind, be honest, be diligent, and life will make sense. But here's the problem: that belief has a name: the just world fallacy, the illusion that life is fair, that effort equals outcome, that virtue guarantees victory. It's a comforting story. It gives meaning to our suffering. But it's not real. And clinging to it in a system built to reward leverage over loyalty, that's not just naive. It's dangerous. While you're staying late, fixing problems you didn't cause, someone else is learning the game. While you're saying yes again, someone else is building alliances, reading people, mastering power, skipping lines. You thought you were being moral. They were being strategic. And in this world, strategy wins. That's why the quiet engineer who keeps the servers running gets laid off, while the executive's reputation advisor gets a promotion. That's why the nurse loses her weekend bonus, while the hospital's PR budget doubles. You were taught to follow the ladder. They were taught how to bypass it. But here's the cruel twist. The system doesn't just fail to reward hard work. It weaponizes your belief in fairness to keep you compliant. The longer you wait for your virtue to be noticed, the easier you are to manage. Because people who believe in justice, they don't rebel. They don't demand more. They keep waiting for recognition, for fairness, for someday. But someday never comes. This isn't just about money. It's about mindset. It's about realizing that if you keep showing up with the wrong map, you'll never reach the right destination. The rules you were taught, they were designed to produce obedient workers, not powerful people. Because the ones who taught you, they already knew the game. They just needed you to keep playing it. So now the real question emerges. If the world isn't fair, if virtue doesn't guarantee victory, then what does? How do you survive without becoming ruthless? How do you move forward without losing your soul? That's where the next chapter begins. The answer isn't to abandon your soul's sense of right and wrong. The answer is to stop worshiping it. Stop treating sacrifice like a strategy. Stop mistaking good intentions for a plan. In a world built on power, true goodness doesn't mean being blind to that power. It means understanding it. Because once your eyes open, you see the truth. Fairness isn't a promise. It's a fairy tale. A story told to keep you obedient, compliant, and quiet. But you were not born to be quiet. You were born to create. So write your own story, not one of blind sacrifice, but of conscious strength. Not one of obedience, but of ownership. Not one where you wait for the world to change, but one where you change your place in it. Because once you see the lie, once you understand that waiting to be rewarded for your goodness is a dead end, you don't throw away your values. You redefine what strength really means. That's the trap so many fall into when they awaken. They think the only alternative to being exploited is to become heartless. But that's not what Nietzsche taught. He wasn't preaching cruelty. He wasn't urging you to abandon integrity. He was urging you to stop mistaking submission for virtue. His call wasn't to destroy morality, but to transcend the morality of weakness, to evolve, to become someone who doesn't just follow rules, but writes new ones, someone who doesn't need permission to live with purpose. In Nietzsche's words, der Übermensch, the overman, not a tyrant, not a villain, but a fully realized individual, a creator of values, someone who walks away from broken systems and builds something better. The overman doesn't wait to be seen. He defines his own meaning. He doesn't wait to be promoted. He creates impact. He doesn't get trapped in the system. He learns when to play it and when to change the board entirely. Power is not evil. It's necessary. Not power over others, but power over yourself. Your choices, your direction, your destiny. You've seen these people. The entrepreneur who walked away from comfort to build something daring. The investor who turned rejection into a revolution. The creator who stopped asking for permission and started taking bold risks. Think of Elon Musk, fired from the company he helped build, ridiculed as reckless, until he turned that fire into an empire, built on vision, conviction, and a refusal to be ruled by fear. What sets people like this apart isn't just talent. It's not luck. It's mindset. They stopped waiting for the system to validate them. They stopped asking, when will they see my worth? And started asking, why am I giving them that power in the first place? That shift from waiting to creating, from submitting to owning. That's the path Nietzsche pointed toward. That's what it means to step out of the cage of moral labor. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Escaping that cage means letting go of something deeply comforting. Your need to be seen as good. It means being willing to disappoint people who benefit from your silence. It means standing alone while you build something worth standing for. And that doesn't just take confidence, it takes courage. Because true strength isn't about domination. It's about authorship. It's about writing a life that aligns with your deepest values, not the values handed to you by a system designed to keep you docile. This isn't about becoming selfish, it's about becoming sovereign. So ask yourself, what would your life look like if you stopped waiting to be rewarded and started rewarding yourself? What if you stopped begging for a seat at the table and built your own? You don't have to become ruthless, but you do have to become responsible for your own power. Because once you understand the system will not save you, there's only one path forward. Stop serving it and start becoming the author of something greater. So what comes next? What does action look like after the awakening? After you've seen through the illusion of moral labor, after you've stopped waiting for fairness, after you've chosen not to abandon morality, but to reclaim it? It begins with this truth. Kindness is not weakness. Strategic kindness, that's strength. Too often people confuse being good with being passive. They think saying yes, avoiding conflict, and putting others first is what makes them noble. But Nietzsche would say, morality without consciousness is just obedience in disguise. The goal is not to become cold, but to become awake. This isn't about being cold or manipulative. It's about becoming aware, about walking through this world with both a moral compass and a survival strategy. Strategic kindness is an art. It's knowing when to help and when to walk away. It's not just trusting people, it's reading them, it's feeling the pulse of the room, knowing when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to strike. You don't say yes just to be liked. You say yes when it honors your truth, your path, your strength. Because not every job deserves your loyalty. Not every leader is worth your trust. Not every opportunity is worth your time. There comes a moment when you have to be the person who knows it's time to walk away, when something no longer serves you and you have the courage to leave. Leaving isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the doorway to your freedom. This is where power enters, not as something stolen, but as something claimed. The power to create, to say no, to build systems where you don't just earn, you own, where your energy no longer fuels someone else's vision, it drives a mission that reflects your values. That might mean starting a business, building an income stream, learning the art of influence, not to manipulate, but to protect your purpose. It means learning to negotiate, to draw the line, to say, I won't do this anymore, and mean it. This isn't betrayal. This is maturity. Because here's the truth. If you don't learn the game of power, you will always be played by it. But if you do learn, you don't have to lose your soul in the process. You can hold power with integrity. Use it not as a trophy, but as a tool. Let ethics shape your direction, but let strategy guide your decisions. Nietzsche said it plainly. Power is not evil. It is the will to become more. More than just a servant. More than just a cog. More than the good employee. It's the will to become the author of your own worth. And you can't do that if you treat morality like a cage. You must treat it like a compass. One that points to your north, not someone else's approval. So no, don't throw away your principles. Don't become another cynical climber chasing clout for clout's sake. But do learn how the game works. Understand leverage. Recognize when you're being used and when you're truly being seen. Because the future, it doesn't belong to the obedient. It belongs to the clear-minded, the conscious, the ones who fuse principle with power, empathy with edge, not the ones waiting for change, but those bold enough to rewrite the terms of their own existence. If you were raised believing that hard work alone was enough, that if you just keep your head down, stay loyal, and do things the right way, life would reward you. It's time to wake up. Not because hard work is useless, but because hard work without power, without strategy, without ownership, keeps you stuck. The real man? He doesn't just labor. He sees the system, understands the rules, and when those rules stop serving him, he writes new ones. That's the difference between surviving and leading, between being a cog in someone else's machine and becoming the architect of your future. So if you're tired of waiting, if you're done sacrificing without return, if you're ready to think deeper, act smarter, and live on your own terms, this is where it begins. Subscribe, not just to understand the world, but to master your place in it. One idea at a time, one decision at a time.